All right. While you're doing that, I want to welcome everyone to this exciting event here with Jay Fiset. And we're going to be talking about the art of relationship building, something that is so important all the time as a business owner. But specifically right now, I think it's such a blessing. For instance, my relationship with Jay, my relationship with many of the other leaders that I know in the coaching space, the fact that I have been consistently connecting with these leaders over the years, getting to know what they're up to, them understanding what I'm up to, and just not just seeing that. Well, it's great that we have this virtual realm, but prior to the pandemic, being able to be actually in the same physical space and connect with people. And I think that it's something that early on in my career, I didn't take seriously. I think I thought that I could just operate my business in a vacuum. And there was somebody who I was connected with who was really making it, who was really rocking their business. And I was asking them, what's the key? What are you doing? And he was like, I show up, I connect with people, I build relationships. And it was kind of like a shock to my system because I realized that I was totally dropping the ball on that. And once he said that, it became a part of my focus as a business owner, and it's been invaluable. And so I'm super excited to have you with us today, Jay.
I am thrilled to be here. And it's funny that you say that because I'm often asked if you could go back and do something different. The answer to the question is like in a nanosecond, it is to spend more time nurturing relationships and feeding and fueling those relationships instead of working till 2 or 3 in the morning trying to do all that shit on my own. It was so clear to me that it's difficult for me to articulate. Actually, it was just at the time it was so clear to me that I just needed to work harder, even when there were opportunities for amazing human beings to support, to participate, to engage, to do all these sorts of things. But I was, I was quote too busy when it could have probably shaved 3 years, 5 years, maybe 7 years off of the trajectory of the business I was working on at the time. It's crazy. And I'd love to just plant a seed for I don't know if any of your viewers like numbers, but here's what that looked like in tangible dollars and cents, is that doing it on my own, I worked like a madman for 15 years, day and night, before we broke $1 million in annual sales. It took me 15 years. And fast forward, building relationships, using joint ventures, strategically coming together with brilliant people, I broke $1 million in 3 days.
In how many days?
3 days.
Oh my God.
1 3-day weekend, we did $1 million. And I should qualify that. Both those numbers are Canadian, just to be clear about this. So not US, so Canadian. But that's a little bit of a difference. So if I could go back, I'll pick the 3 days every single time now that I know.
Yeah, that's a massive acceleration of an objective. Awesome. Well, I want to open this up, and I want to start off by sharing a little bit more about you for those who are watching and don't know Jay. Many of you guys probably do know Jay, but just to make sure that I'm covering all grounds, Jay is a best-selling author, student of human nature, avid outdoorsman at 5-star hotels, speaks fluent smartass, can see and reflect your life mission in 5 minutes flat, loves having 2 sons so he can play with their toys. We have that in common. Both of us have 2 sons. Still fantasizes about his wife after 25 years, loves ideas, but loves results even more, can simultaneously laugh and cry for different reasons at the same time. That's awesome. Has never been starstruck, but did not get a chance to meet Martin Luther King. And there would have been a teenage girl screaming if he had, and he would have been that teenage girl. And he's dedicated to instigating global movement of conscious creators and supporting people to organize their life and resources around their passions and gifts. And, it should be noted that he has created a lot of different successful brands and has been in this game a lot longer than I have. And, really lately, I know have been focusing on this whole relationship building track with JVs and JVology and a lot of live events that you've done that really focus on this topic. So I'm just grateful to have you with us. And I'm really excited for some of the wisdom that you're going to share today.
Well, my pleasure, and it is becoming clearer and clearer to me as I think I get a little bit older in this process, Sean, that God damn, I do not want the journey to be as difficult and as taxing as it was for me. And if there are some shortcuts or easier pathways for folks in the entrepreneurial space, I am happy to share, like happy. Like I could be a poster child of shit not to do.
Love that. I love it. Some of the best things that mentors can be is just, this is what you should not do.
Yes.
That's awesome. So one quick thing is I want to make sure your mic is connected to your headset for sure, because I'm getting some feedback that it might be connected improperly. I don't know. We can hear you, but there's something.
I'm going to just get in there and double check because I've been moving stuff all over the place. Input is external microphone, and it doesn't give me a selection from my head. You know what's been happening actually, Sean, is that I have been running like a madman during this pandemic, and I have wrecked more headphones just from the running, and I'm going to just try and unplug and plug back in and see if that works.
Okay, perfect.
Testing.
That's much better. Look at
Is
that.
it?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Woo!
I won't fiddle.
All right. Okay, so what I really want to get into is, I know that you're running a 5-day challenge soon, and this is really exciting because the type of challenge that you're talking about is one in which you walk away with some pretty amazing results by the end. And the idea of somebody coming out of 1 week's time with you and being able to get 5 joint venture partners, just that idea. For anybody who's watching, I'd love for you to hear, put down, what would that do for you? Because I know for me, I work with a lot of people who they're sitting there they've got the goal, they've got the wisdom, they might even have a webinar or a talk that they're ready to do. But the problem is they don't have the fuel to get it in front of people. And so if they had some people who had an audience, it would change the game, but they get stuck. They think, oh, I'm not worthy, or they have all kinds of stuff that comes up. So tell us what your perspective is on the whole JV thing, and whether somebody's at the beginning or they've been in the game for a bit. Like what's the way in which people should be looking at it, and how do they take advantage of the whole JV thing? Nicely
put. So I'm just going to back up to where I think most people don't see or get what transpires there, and it's this. Is that the vast majority of the world, in my humble opinion, has been subjected to the marketing of all you need is a digital program, or all you need is your signature talk, or all you need is this, or all you need is that. And we have a world full of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, people in the intellectual property business in some way, shape, or form, who are cranking out content and hiding in their basement, building their course and writing their book and crafting their talk and all those pieces. And what I see time and again, because when those things are completed, those folks always show up in my world. It's like, hey, I have, the world's greatest book, and it does X, Y, Z and LMNOP, and can I get a bunch of your people to like send it to everybody? And it's like, well, yes, you can, but they're not doing it today, and they likely aren't doing it next month. I said, well, why not? It's done. It's like, well, the answer is because they don't know who you are, and honest to goodness, they don't give a shit. You haven't invested, you haven't built a relationship, you haven't become significant, you haven't contributed, you haven't built the foundation that they care about what's in your book, talk, or course. They just really don't. And they're always a little bit taken aback. So the truth is, most of the world has this backwards. And by the way, Lord knows I'm guilty of this. I think from your introduction, Sean, I think you probably were too, is that we get so focused on the thing, on our modality, on our magic trick, on our 3-step process, on our contribution to the world, that we forget to do the part that's important, which is to build relationships. So on that note, just to be clear about this, what our entire 5-day challenge, which is called the Joint Venture Jumpstart, 5 partners in 5 days, what that entire process is about building the relationships, which, think of it this way, that becomes the pipeline through which you can distribute whatever you write, your book, your course, your talk, your whatever the case may be. It's just time again. What we have to do is back up the bus. So lots of people, by the way, when I say this, like, yeah, but I'm not ready to build relationships because my course isn't done, my book isn't done, my avatar is still slightly confused. It's like, here's the truth of the matter. you know fundamentally what business you're in. You know fundamentally who you're going to serve. It's as simple as, and we teach this in the 5 days, is that you understand what the upstream and the downstream model is, which is basically who your client is and what problems they have before they need you and what problems they have after they see you. Is that if you can just identify that, which we will help you do in the 5 days, then invest hard and heavy in the building of relationships with people who have clients on a similar journey. As the other stuff gets done, you will be astounded. And just going back to the example earlier. By the way, I get a little carried away with this. Just stop me if I'm ranting too much.
No, I love it.
Just going back to the example of 15 years to break 7 figures in sales to doing it in 3 days. How that happened was I spent an entire year before our product or service or experience even existed, serving, supporting, and getting behind people in their launches. And by the time ours was done, it was a simple, would you support? And it was like, hell yes. Say when, say how, say what. And those folks went into what we call the Launch Your Mastermind 90-day bootcamp. They showed up at a 3-day live event and chose to get more support in terms of building and rolling out their masterminds. It was a very simple piece. But the part that people always miss is that those folks that were on our first launches, they didn't support us by accident. They didn't support us because I sent them a random Facebook message. They supported because I stood for them a year or 14 months or 16 months earlier. Their cell phone was in my phone where I could text them and say, hey, would you consider? That's the part that has to happen first. And that's why the JV Jumpstart, 5 partners in 5 days, is so important. It's like, let's build the relationships and the pipeline. What you're going to put through that, honest to goodness, is secondary, which is counterintuitive, but true. Anyway, I'll stop talking.
No, I love it. I think it's amazing advice to be ahead of the game where you're helping people, a year or whatever, many months before you start asking for support. And it makes sense that you start building up that goodwill and you create that service-based sort of relationship. I think the thing that comes up for people is a lot of people, they operate their business, and I know this because I did it and because also I have the creative mind, and we tend to go with the flow, not be as organized, not have as much of our ducks in order in advance, be a little bit like, okay, I've got to figure out how to bring clients in next week, so I'm going to do this thing, right? So like, how do we think more strategically? How do we think more think in advance enough to start, like, what's that give
Sorry,
and
my
take?
computer almost fell. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, right there.
How do we?
You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
like, how
I
do we
do.
get out of that, like thinking, oh, I'm behind the 8 ball already. How do I get ahead of the game so that I'm really, like, what's that mindset? What's that process?
Well, it's a very good question, and I'm actually going back to when I started in this space and decided I was just going to serve and support people first. And the truth of that statement is that for me at the time, I had to do it that way because I didn't know what I was doing. Like I sort of sensed this JV world. I saw some what I would call miraculous results happening in the JV world, and I just needed to figure out how the hell to do it. So I don't. I didn't do it as strategically as I could, just to be perfectly clear. Now, that said, I'll tell you one of the things that we work on in the JVology community is we call it 3 for free, 3 for fee, and 3 for me. And it's basically just 9 simple little actions that, and by the way, this is not something we talk about in large part in the challenge, although we do touch on it. But what it really does is it helps us to divide our energy. Is that what are 3 free contributions I can make to relationships and the people that are on my upstream and my downstream model? And sometimes that's as simple as jumping on a Facebook Live, like you and I are doing. It's as simple as sharing a post or a comment. It's as simple as saying, hey, I might not be in your launch, but I would love to feature this article that you wrote, and can I share it with my tribe? So 3 for free. It doesn't cost you anything, but what it does is it puts you ahead of the curve on the relationship building process. Then 3 for fee. And that is a little bit of being willing to invest a little bit of money, time, energy, all those sorts of things, which is, so can I send a book to somebody? Can I share a podcast? Could I, you've got kids. And one of the things I will often do is anybody who has kids in my world, if they say they will read it, I send them a copy of a book called Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Children. That book saved our life. And those that read it, I get like forever gratitude of it. So what's a little bit of money that you can spend or invest to actually again nurture those relationships. Which, by the way, doesn't mean you have to write a check. Sometimes it's I will give a program away that the gift, for example, which is a personal development thing. It's usually $1,000. I will often give one of those away for somebody who's in a spot that needs a transformation and a nudge. And then 3 for me is, what can I do to serve and support me, taking care of my body, taking care of my soul, taking care of my spirit, taking care of, and that model of, and just notice there's 6 of them are for other pieces, 3 of them are for me, helps to direct my energy at the important part, which is building relationships.
When you that's incredible. I love the simplicity of that. And if you're getting value on that idea, please share in the comments what that that model that he just talked about, what you got from it. I wanted to ask you, when you're thinking about that 3 for free, 3 for fee, 3 for me, is that for each person you connect with? Like, is that per day? Like, where does that happen?
Daily activity.
Daily, I see.
Daily activity, and if you look at it, it really adds up to like 3,500 actions that are deliberate, conscious, moving forward, and beginning to balance what I'm going to call the incessant and persistent immediate needs that we as entrepreneurs have, with just a moment or two of raising our head and heart to say, okay, that's all well and fine. I still got to take care of my stuff. That's great. But if I cannot get ahead of the curve and build relationships with the people that are on my upstream and downstream in a meaningful manner, it's going to be the same shit, different day. So we have to do that, and that's just one of the easiest ways I know how. And by the way, we just embed that in our community, in our conversations, in our process, so that if you're a part of our JVology community, you'll find that you make a post and goodness gracious, my likes, my shares, and my engagement have gone way up. That isn't accidental. It's because people in the community are paying attention to you and doing their damnedest to serve and support. Give me 1 second.
That's amazing, Jay. I love that. I love the practicality of it. I think that you really gave a new paradigm to the idea that I shared, where I think people are operating kind of, they're really trying to solve their own problem, like you said, kind of have these blinders on, and really getting in their own way because of that, because they've got all of these networks around them, but they don't have their head up to see them or to be of service to them or to utilize them. So I love that.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, please.
Just real quick, because it is incredibly simple, but in the JV Jumpstart 5 partners in 5 days is what I'm attempting to say. We actually start with day 1 on this fundamental idea, which is that of abundance. And this whole thing about trying to take care of our own stuff is often driven by scarcity, particularly in the pandemic. I mean, things have contracted in many areas, and it can be a little bit tough and challenging. And good Lord, folks, I get that. And to me, it's one of the reasons why, if you have felt any sort of contraction in this process, you have to do the 5-day challenge. Like you just don't have a chance. There's no other option. It's silly not to. But in that process, we actually start with day 1 about this idea of abundance, because we have 2 fundamental core driving beliefs in our community. The first of which is we're better together, which means that to serve our clients and to truly solve the problems that our clients face, we can't do that alone. Each of us has our own little speciality. Each of us has our own little magic trick, all the rest of it. But it's usually just one little step on the entire journey that our client needs support with. So first and foremost, if we're better together, then why don't we actually just serve our clients better by figuring out who and what and where the problems are for our clients, and how do we help them solve them? Not just provide our one service, but help them solve the real problems that they face. And then the next one is a joint venture is a game of I'll go first, which is where this 3 for free, 3 for fee come from. It's like, if I'm going to go first, then how do I contribute? How do I become relevant? How do I do something that actually genuinely serves my partners and my community? And that's where we really begin to shift this idea and experience away from scarcity to abundance, where it's like, hey, it is not hard for me to share a post. It is not hard for me to jump on a Facebook Live. It is not hard for me to say, hey, you should meet X because your next problem that you're going to face is this. And that's where things get really beautiful and fascinating.
So I love that. Can you give us another or a couple more examples of the I go first? Like, it sounds like a mindset, but it also sounds like just anything else you can share about that, because I think that's so special.
Well, it's really, and I'm just going to back up for a moment or two to contextualize this. I think that, I'm willing to bet actually there are people watching this who've been a little put off by the idea of joint ventures because they've had some dingbat come and say, hey, let's joint venture. You do a bunch of shit for me and it'll be fantastic.
Right.
And we've all gotten these random Facebook messages of your tribe is exactly my match. And as you look into it, that has nothing to do with anything, right? So this idea of a joint venture as a game of I'll go first is that if I want to build a relationship with somebody, if I want to reach somebody's tribe, if I want to actually create this long-term upstream, downstream pipeline, then it's incumbent upon me, if I want that I step up and go first. So it's not, hey, Sean, I'd love you to send stuff to your community. It's, hey, what are you working on? Is there a way in which I can support? Is there a spot in which I could feature you on a show? Is there a spot in which I could send an email? Do you have anything going on? Like, it's that whole piece about standing for the message and the solution that your partner has that, frankly, your clients need. And if you've done your homework on your clients, you know what that is. That is what I mean by going first. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's as simple as, I'll give you a great example. Any of you who have somebody who has written a book, and by the way, this could be self-published, this could be a big publishing house, any of those sorts of things. Here's a great example. Be one of the first 3 to 5 people to review and leave a 5-star rating on Amazon. That is a good example of going first. Does that make sense? So it doesn't cost you anything. All you have to do is be cognizant, present, and aware that for this book to move, for this person to get the endorsement, for this person to begin to get feedback in the algorithm on Amazon, what they need is some fast, early, and great reviews. Simple as setting your alarm, getting up in the morning, and going and doing that. The first thing. And make no mistake about it, every author who has ever put anything on Amazon goes to those reviews over and over and over again to see where is it, what is it, who is it, and guess whose name shows up first as somebody who got you, stood for you, and communicated that to the world. That's a great example of going first.
I think it's an amazing paradigm. Some people naturally have it. Other people, I think the majority, need to practice it. It's something that is a practice, but I think the good thing is it's almost like, to me, I somehow relate it to productivity for some reason. It's like people think doing a bunch of things is equivalent to productivity, but it's really doing the few things that really matter, right? And it's like a paradigm shift. And when you start doing a few things that matter, whether it's 2 things that really moved the needle versus 20 things that really didn't do anything, you start to feel that feeling of productivity when you go to bed at night, which we all seek to feel like we had a good day. And I think that there's something about being able to feel like you were of service and that you put others first and that you gave and that, you weren't just all about yourself. And that feeling is a success in itself, whether or not it leads to some big thing that you get in return, whether or not it means that your business grows. Like, there's all this sort of like, we do the joint venture thing because obviously it's a business tactic. But I think the piece that is important to speak to is the way that you feel when you become somebody who moves out of being about yourself and you make it a habit to become somebody who puts others first. And I just wonder if, what you think of that and how we can help people to start to, move in this direction of making the things you're talking about part of their new paradigm.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the simplest way that I know how to do this, and we get feedback about it at our live events all the time, which is like, how did you find all of these incredibly giving and amazing people? It's kind of like you hand selected and weeded out all the jerks and the asses. And so, and my answer is always this, is that in the community that declares its values, we attract the right people. In the community that does its best to live its values, we nurture those characteristics even further. And so my short answer to that question is this, is that it's very difficult to do on our own. It is certainly difficult to do under quarantine, but the thing that must transpire to shift us is for us to get in community where that's the norm, where that's the expected, where you have this free-flowing, bad words, free-flowing flow, but there's this perpetual flow of support, of engagement, of care, of concern. That's the thing, and that's why I really want people to come do the 5-day challenge. Check it out. It's free. Again, the price is incredibly expensive. It's free. And do the 5 days, create that result, and see what it's like to be in a community like that. Because honest God, it will blow your hair back. It genuinely will.
That's why I wanted to interview you, like this, just like you were talking about, this whole idea of really wanting to stand for the message of the people that you know in your community. Like, I really want the people that I work with, or the people that are in my world, the people that are, connecting with me through my visibility challenge. I want them to get this piece that you have. I want them to get more confident in their skills around the joint venture partner thing, because look, getting in front of people, it can seem complicated, and it can be complicated when you're sitting there trying to do just organic marketing all day long. And that's great. And there's different things that will work. And if you're consistent, whether it's blogging or whatever, you'll create that audience. But if you want to be able to, get a lot of people in front of your stuff, and you've got the goods, you really need to invest in this direction. And like you said, the investment is free in this particular challenge, and the opportunity for them to actually start to make this a part of their habits. But I'm just really passionate about getting people this information, because this isn't my genius zone. I've definitely done some work in the JV world, and I look to get better and better at it. I'm much better in some of these conversion tools, whether it's from stage, from webinar, from a one-on-one phone call. I'm able to get my people to convert well when they get in front of people. But that issue of how we get them in front of more people, it's something that I want them to get better at. And that's why I want to bring people in like you who can help them with it. So if you're watching this, whether you're watching this live or you're watching this on replay, you'll see a link under the video that we have here on Facebook. And it is going to lead you to the 5-day challenge that Jay has put on. And I really want to recommend that you join. It's coming up in a week, or what's
our first official day is the 14th. It runs 14th to the 19th. And it's just simple, basic actions every single day. It's probably going to take a maximum of 15 minutes a day. And you will end in those 5 days with 5 partners or more. We've had people get 5 partners in 2 days. That's the current record. But just to be clear about this, is that lots of people struggle to get 5 partners in 6 months or 9 months. And in this model, with what we teach you, the quality of the training is exceptional. And just as simple as this, come and do it. You've got a little bit of extra time. You might as well build that foundation of what's going to catapult you forward in the future. So we will see you in the 5-day challenge. I appreciate you having me, Sean.
You're welcome, Jay. Thanks so much for being here. And we will see you guys on the next one.
Sounds great.